If you've ever wondered what it would feel like to pilot a fully customizable mecha through demon-infested battlegrounds while dodging literal walls of enemy fire, Demon Hunt is that game. It doesn't just borrow from the Bullet Heaven formula, it adds vertical layers of build depth, progression, and variety that make each run feel like more than just a survival test. It's a roguelite that wants you to experiment, evolve, and feel powerful every step of the way. At its core, Demon Hunt is about movement and destruction. You're dropped into vibrant, chaotic maps swarming with enemies, some demonic, some celestial, all aggressive. You'll dodge through thick waves of attacks while unleashing absolute carnage with your arsenal. But the kicker? Every weapon in your loadout doesn't just level up, it transforms. You're not just dealing more damage, you're altering the entire function of your build depending on the path you choose. One weapon might start as a simple burst blaster and end up as a screen-clearing wave cannon or a chain-reactive AoE nuke, depending on how you evolve it. And this choice isn't cosmetic, it's tactical, because different enemies, bosses, and even stage modifiers will push you to rethink your approach. Each run introduces new variables. Sometimes it's the enemy types, sometimes it's the environmental hazards. There's even a threat level system that escalates as you survive longer, forcing you to adapt on the fly. It's the kind of tension that keeps you locked in from start to finish. Now here's where it really starts to dig in. The mechas. There are 3 main mech frames to choose from, and each one brings a totally different playstyle to the table. You've got one that's more speed and evasion focused, another that's a tanky juggernaut with big crowd control potential, and a third that's all about burst damage and aggressive energy builds. And they're not just skins with stats. They come with their own unique abilities and full-on talent trees you customize over time. Between runs, you head back to your base, and that's where things get even deeper. There's an entire gear crafting system built around recycling loot, upgrading weapons, and tweaking stats. It's not just filler. This stuff matters. A small stat boost or the right passive perk can shift how your entire loadout plays. You're constantly improving between runs, but the upgrades never feel cheap or automatic. You're making real choices that shape future attempts. And then there are the Orbs. These are modular upgrades you can slot into specific nodes in your mech's build path. But they're not just plus 5% damage style add-ons. Some orbs activate based on movement, some based on kills, others tie into cooldowns or specific weapon types. So instead of just stacking raw numbers, you're creating conditional synergies, builds that reward specific behaviors like staying aggressive, dashing constantly, or timing your abilities for burst windows. It scratches that deep build itch without bogging things down in micromanagement. Exploration adds another layer on top. Each map is filled with shrines, altars, hidden chests, and mini-challenges. Some offer direct rewards, others throw in risk-reward mechanics that ask if you want to gamble health for big gains. It's not open world, but it gives you room to roam, find secrets, and decide how aggressive you want to play it. And with more maps on the way, that sense of discovery is only going to expand. Boss fights deserve a mention too. They're not just bigger enemies with more health. Each one introduces its own mechanics and attack patterns. Some summon adds, others shift the entire battlefield layout. You'll run into situations where you're juggling a screen full of enemies while dodging phase-based boss attacks. So having a flexible loadout isn't just nice, it's mandatory. What makes Demon Hunt work is the way it layers replayability with actual depth. You're not just re-rolling for luck each time, you're improving strategically. Testing different mechs, evolving weapons in new ways, trying out orb combos you haven't used before, and seeing what happens when you push a run with max threat modifiers. It stays fun because there's always something to learn, something to unlock, and some wild synergy you haven't seen yet. So if you're into games that let you experiment, feel overpowered, and adapt in real time without holding your hand, Demon Hunt is worth a serious look. It brings the chaos of bullet heaven combat, the satisfaction of deep roguelite progression, and the fun of just absolutely annihilating anything that moves, all without ever becoming a chore. Whether you're chasing perfect runs, min-maxing your mech, or just in it for the screen-shaking explosions, Demon Hunt doesn't just ask you to survive, it dares you to dominate.